The diamond felt like a small, cold star in his palm, catching the overhead lights of the opulent jeweler's showroom. They say love is a weakness, a chink in the armor of any man who walks the razor's edge. They're lying. Love, true love, was the only thing that made the brutality of his world bearable, the only compass in a sea of blood and betrayal. And for Isabella, he would walk through fire. For Isabella, he would buy a ring that cost more than some men's entire lives, a gleaming promise of a future he hadn't dared to dream of until she, with her quiet strength and unwavering gaze, had made him believe it was possible. Enzo Moretti, a name whispered in hushed tones from the bustling docks to the gleaming towers of the city, stood before the velvet-lined display, his impeccably tailored suit a stark contrast to the casual shoppers milling about. His eyes, usually sharp and assessing, were softened, focused entirely on the shimmering stone. It was a 3.5 carat, cushion-cut, flawless, set in platinum, a masterpiece of light and fire. He had chosen it himself, after weeks of clandestine visits to the city's most exclusive jewelers, each one vetted, each one discreetly informed of his preferences. No questions, no records, just the finest craftsmanship and absolute silence. He imagined it on Isabella's slender finger, a beacon against the darkness that often threatened to consume him. She was a woman of quiet elegance, a lawyer who had stumbled into his orbit during a legal skirmish and, against all odds, had stayed. She understood the weight he carried, the shadow he cast, and yet she saw past it, to the man beneath. He loved her for that, for her courage and her calm. This ring was not just a symbol of their impending union. It was a testament to his desire for a normal life, a life where the scent of gunpowder was replaced by fresh-cut flowers, where whispered threats gave way to lullabies. A magnificent choice, Mr. Moretti. The jeweler, a thin man named Mr. Dubois with a nervous tic, murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He knew Enzo's reputation, knew the kind of power that radiated from him, a silent hum that made the very air in the room crackle. It will be ready for collection in 2 days. Engraving, as requested? Enzo nodded, a curt gesture. Yes. E+I, forever. Simple, yet profound. He pulled a thick envelope from his inner jacket pocket, the crisp bills inside a testament to his wealth, and placed it on the counter. Cash. Mr. Dubois swallowed, his eyes darting to the envelope, then back to Enzo's unreadable face. Of course, Mr. Moretti, as always. He began to count, his fingers trembling slightly. While Dubois meticulously counted the stacks of hundreds, Enzo's gaze drifted, idly sweeping across the showroom. It was a habit, a reflex ingrained from years of needing to know every exit, every potential threat, every face in a crowded room. His eyes, honed by a life of danger, registered the other patrons. A young couple giggling over engagement bands, an elderly woman admiring a pearl necklace, a man in a business suit looking at a watch. And then his breath hitched. Across the polished marble floor, near a display of delicate silver chains, stood a woman. Her back was to him, but the curve of her spine, the elegant slope of her neck, the rich, dark coils of her hair pulled back into a messy bun. It was a silhouette etched into the deepest, most guarded chambers of his memory. His heart, a muscle he'd long believed to be made of stone, gave a violent lurch, a painful, unexpected spasm. It couldn't be. Not here, not now. Not after all these years. She turned slightly, reaching down to adjust something, and in that fleeting movement, he saw her profile. The high cheekbones, the full lips, the strong, beautiful line of her jaw. It was her, Imani, his ex-wife, the woman he had loved with a fierceness that had nearly consumed him, the woman he had lost to the cruel machinations of his world, to the very darkness he now sought to escape for Isabella. A cold dread seeped into his bones, chilling him despite the warmth of the showroom. Imani. Here. And then, the world tilted on its axis, shattering the careful composure he had cultivated over 2 decades. She wasn't alone. Clinging to her hand, a small, dark-skinned boy, no older than 5 or 6, tugged at her dress. He had a bright, inquisitive face, framed by a mop of curly hair. He looked up at Imani, his eyes wide and innocent, and she bent down, a soft smile gracing her lips, a smile Enzo hadn't seen directed at him in 20 years, a smile he had once lived for. The boy laughed, a clear, bell-like sound that pierced the sterile quiet of the jewelry store and, more acutely, Enzo's soul. He had the same laugh, the same bright, curious eyes. Enzo felt the blood drain from his face, leaving him cold and clammy. His hand, still holding the imaginary weight of Isabella's ring, trembled. The diamond, once a symbol of his future, now felt like a shard of ice, cutting deep. A son. Imani had a son, and the boy looked so much like him. The same dark hair, the same strong brow, even the way he held his head, a slight tilt of defiance. It was a mirror image of himself at that age, a ghost from a past he had painstakingly buried. A dizzying wave of nausea washed over him. This wasn't just a chance encounter. This wasn't just his past walking back into his present. This was a seismic shift, a rupture in the carefully constructed edifice of his life. Mr. Dubois cleared his throat, pulling Enzo back from the precipice of his internal collapse. Mr. Moretti, the count is complete. Will you be picking this up personally, or should we arrange a secure delivery? Enzo barely heard him. His gaze was still locked on Imani and the boy, a silent, desperate plea for understanding. His world, which moments ago had been on the verge of a beautiful new beginning, had just imploded. The Mafia boss, who had navigated countless betrayals, countless threats, countless blood-soaked skirmishes, was utterly, irrevocably undone by the sight of his ex-wife and a child who might be his son. The ring, the future, Isabella, it all receded, replaced by the overwhelming, suffocating question, who is that boy? The scene blurred around him, the glittering displays, the hushed conversations, the very air in the room seemed to press in, suffocating him. He felt like he was drowning, pulled under by a tidal wave of memory and unbearable possibility. He had loved Imani with a fierce, possessive passion, a love that had been both his strength and his greatest vulnerability. Their marriage, brief and tempestuous, had been a whirlwind of stolen moments and whispered promises, ultimately crushed under the relentless demands of his family, his business. She had left him, not because she stopped loving him, but because she couldn't bear the constant threat, the violence that clung to him like a second skin. He had let her go, believing it was the only way to keep her safe, to give her a chance at a life free from the shadow of the Moretti name. He had mourned her, truly, deeply, but he had also convinced himself that it was for the best, that she had moved on, found happiness, a quiet life far from his dangerous orbit. And now, here she was. Not just moved on, but seemingly thriving, radiating a maternal warmth he had never imagined her possessing. And the boy. The boy was a punch to the gut, a visceral jolt that resonated deep within his very DNA. He remembered the arguments, the desperate pleas from Imani in their final months together. Enzo, we need to talk about a family. I want children. A real life, not just this constant fear. He had always demurred, always found an excuse, convinced that bringing a child into his world would be a death sentence, a target painted on an innocent back. He had sacrificed his desire for a family, for her desire for a family, to protect them. And now he saw what his sacrifice had wrought, a family, but not with him. A wave of bitterness, sharp and acrid, mixed with the shock. Had she found someone else so quickly after their divorce? Someone who could give her the life he couldn't? The thought was a searing brand on his heart. He, Enzo Moretti, the man who commanded armies and controlled empires, was reduced to a jealous, heartbroken fool, staring at a ghost from his past. Imani, still unaware of his presence, lifted the boy into her arms, nuzzling his neck. The child giggled, his small hands wrapping around her neck. It was a picture of pure, unadulterated domestic bliss. A scene ripped from the pages of a life Enzo had been denied, a life he had denied himself. He felt a profound, aching emptiness in his chest, a void that Isabella's love, as beautiful and true as it was, could not fill in this moment. His eyes, usually so guarded, were wide, reflecting the raw pain and confusion swirling within him. He wanted to call out her name, to demand answers, to pull her into his arms and confirm that this was real, that she was truly here. But the words caught in his throat, strangled by the sheer impossibility of the situation. What would he say? Imani? Is that my son? The thought was ludicrous, dangerous, a direct threat to the fragile peace he had built. He watched as she carried the boy towards the exit, her head held high, her movements graceful and confident. The child's face was turned towards him for a fleeting second, and in that instant, Enzo saw it again. The unmistakable resemblance. The same dark, intense eyes, the same strong chin. It was like looking at a photograph of himself, aged 5. A chill, colder than any winter wind, swept through him. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was a mirror. He needed to know. He had to know. Mr. Moretti? Mr. Dubois' voice was a distant buzz, like a fly trapped in a jar. Is everything all right? You look unwell. Enzo barely registered the jeweler's concern. His eyes were fixed on the retreating figures, his mind racing, trying to process the impossible. He had to follow them. He had to get answers. But how? Without revealing himself, without shattering the carefully constructed anonymity Imani had clearly built for herself. He clenched his jaw, a muscle ticking furiously. The ring, the symbol of his future with Isabella, felt like a burning coal in his pocket. He had come here to solidify one life, and instead, he had stumbled upon the ghost of another. A ghost that had just manifested itself in the form of a small boy with his eyes. The ring, Enzo managed, his voice rough, strained. Keep it. I'll be back. He turned abruptly, leaving the stunned jeweler and the envelope of cash on the counter. His gaze swept the showroom one last time, a predator tracking its prey, before he moved with a swift, predatory grace towards the exit, his focus entirely on the woman and child who had just walked out of the store and irrevocably back into his life. The cold autumn air hit him like a slap, but he barely felt it. His eyes scanned the busy street, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Imani and the boy were already a block ahead, blending into the lunchtime crowd. He quickened his pace, careful to maintain a discreet distance, his senses on high alert. He was no longer Enzo Moretti, the powerful boss preparing for a wedding. He was a man propelled by an ancient, primal instinct, chasing a shadow and a question that threatened to dismantle his entire existence. He followed them through the bustling city streets, past trendy cafes and upscale boutiques. Imani walked with a confident stride, her hand firmly clasped around the boy's. The child, full of boundless energy, chattered incessantly, pointing at storefronts, asking questions, his voice a bright counterpoint to the city's ceaseless hum. Enzo watched them, a phantom ache in his chest, a longing so profound it was almost unbearable. He saw the way Imani would stop, patiently answer the boy's questions, her head tilted, her smile soft. He saw the way she ruffled his hair, the easy intimacy between them. It was everything he had ever wanted, everything he had convinced himself he couldn't have. He kept his distance, weaving through the crowds, his dark eyes never leaving them. He felt a desperate need to know more, to understand the circumstances of this boy's life, of Imani's life. Who was the father? Had she married again? A surge of irrational jealousy, sharp and unexpected, pierced him. He, Enzo Moretti, had never been jealous of another man in his life. But this was different. This was Imani. And this was a child who looked like him. They eventually turned onto a quieter residential street, lined with brownstones and mature trees. Imani stopped in front of a modest, well-maintained brownstone, pulling a set of keys from her purse. The boy, seeing their destination, let out a joyful shout and ran ahead, bounding up the steps. Imani followed, her laughter echoing softly in the afternoon air. Enzo watched from the corner, hidden in the shadows of an alcove. He saw her unlock the door, saw the boy disappear inside, saw Imani linger for a moment, glancing back down the street, as if sensing a presence. His heart stopped. Had she seen him? Did she know he was there? But her gaze swept past his hiding spot, unseeing. She sighed, a small, weary sound, and then stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The street was silent once more, save for the distant city hum. Enzo stood there, alone, the cold seeping into his bones. He knew where she lived. He had her address. It was a dangerous piece of information, a threat to the carefully constructed anonymity she had built. But he couldn't leave it alone. He couldn't walk away, not now. Not with the image of that boy, his son's spitting image, burned into his mind. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the keypad. "Marco," he barked into the receiver, his voice tight, strained. "I need you to run a background check, discreetly. A woman named Imani Davis. Last known address was... Well, I'll send you the old one. But I just saw her at a new one, a brownstone on Maple Street. And she has a child, a boy, maybe 5 or 6. I need everything, Marco, and I need it yesterday." Marco, his most trusted lieutenant, a man who rarely questioned Enzo's orders, hesitated. "A child, boss? This is unusual." "Just do it, Marco," Enzo snapped, his patience wearing thin. "And tell no one, you understand? Not even Isabella. This is personal." A long silence on the other end. Marco, knowing Enzo's tone, understood the gravity of the command. "Consider it done, boss, and I'll be discreet, like a ghost." Enzo hung up, the phone feeling heavy in his hand. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door of the brownstone, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. He had come to buy a ring, a symbol of a new beginning. Instead, he had found a phantom from his past, a child who looked like him, and a future that was suddenly, terrifyingly uncertain. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, brick by painful brick. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that nothing would ever be the same again. The silence of the street felt less like peace and more like the calm before a storm that he himself had just inadvertently summoned. He walked back to his car, his movements stiff, almost mechanical. The short drive to his penthouse apartment felt like an eternity. He kept replaying the scene in the jewelry store, Imani's smile, the boys' laughter, the way their hands were intertwined. Each image was a fresh stab to his heart, a reminder of what he had lost, of what he had sacrificed, and of what might have been. When he finally arrived, Isabella was waiting for him in the living room, a soft cashmere throw draped over her shoulders, a book open in her lap. She looked up, her face lighting up with a gentle smile. "Enzo, you're back. Everything all right? You look troubled." He forced a smile, a brittle, unconvincing mask. "Just a long day, Kata. Business. You know how it is." He walked over to her, bending to kiss her forehead, the touch feeling strangely detached, almost mechanical. Her scent, usually so comforting, now felt alien, a stark contrast to the ghost of Imani's perfume that still lingered in his memory. "Did you get it?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "The ring?" Enzo's heart gave another painful lurch. He had completely forgotten about the ring, about his mission. The diamond, still sitting on Mr. Dubois' counter, felt like a betrayal. "Not yet," he lied, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. They needed a few more days for the engraving, a custom job. Isabella's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "Oh, I see. Well, it's worth the wait, I'm sure." She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "You really do seem distant, Enzo. Is there anything I can do?" He squeezed her hand, a pang of guilt shooting through him. Isabella was good, kind, loving. She deserved honesty, transparency. But how could he tell her? How could he explain that the ghost of his past had just appeared, holding a child who could very well be his son? It was a truth too monstrous, too destabilizing to utter. "No, Kata," he said, forcing a reassuring tone. "Just tired. A lot on my mind." He pulled his hand away gently, needing space, needing to breathe. "I think I'll just have a drink and head to bed. Long day tomorrow." Isabella nodded, her smile fading completely, replaced by a look of quiet concern. She was perceptive, intelligent. She knew him better than most. He could see the questions in her eyes, questions he wouldn't answer. Not yet. Maybe never. He retreated to his study, pouring himself a generous measure of amber liquid, the familiar burn a welcome distraction from the turmoil in his mind. He stared out at the city lights, a glittering tapestry of indifference. The world kept spinning, oblivious to the earthquake that had just rocked his carefully constructed life. He thought of Imani, of the fierce love they had shared, a love that had burned so brightly, so dangerously, before his world had consumed it. He remembered her laughter, her passion, her unwavering belief in a future that he, in his arrogance, had deemed impossible. He had pushed her away, thinking he was protecting her, giving her a chance at a normal life. And now, seeing her with that child, that beautiful, vibrant child who looked so much like him, he wondered if he had been a fool. Had he truly protected her, or had he simply condemned himself to a life of perpetual longing, of what-ifs and might-have-beens? The whiskey burned a path down his throat, but it did little to quell the gnawing anxiety in his gut. He had to know. He had to understand. And he would. He would find out the truth, no matter the cost, no matter the wreckage it left in its wake. This was no longer about a wedding ring or a future with Isabella. This was about a ghost, a child, and a past that had just violently collided with his present, threatening to shatter everything he had built. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and strained conversations with Isabella. Enzo found himself distracted, his mind constantly replaying the scene in the jewelry store, his gaze often drifting to his phone, waiting for Marco's call. He was a phantom in his own life, moving through the motions, his thoughts consumed by Imani and the boy. The weight of his secret, the knowledge that he was keeping such a monumental truth from Isabella, pressed down on him, a heavy, suffocating burden. Guilt, a rare emotion for him, gnawed at him. He loved Isabella, truly. She was his calm, his anchor in a tumultuous world. But the image of Imani and the child, the possibility of a son he never knew he had irrevocably shifted something deep within him. Marco's call finally came, late one night. Enzo was in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey, the city lights a distant, uncaring shimmer outside his window. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with anticipation. "Boss." Marco's voice was low, grave. "I have something. It wasn't easy. She's good at disappearing." "Just tell me, Marco," Enzo urged, his heart pounding. "Imani Davis. She moved to this city about 5 years ago. Before that, she was in a small town upstate. She works as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. Good reputation, clean record, no significant assets, no large debts, lives a quiet life." Marco paused, and Enzo could hear the rustle of papers on the other end. "The boy, his name is Noah Davis. He's 5 years old. His birth certificate lists Imani Davis as the sole parent, no father listed." Enzo felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. No father listed. That could mean anything. Or it could mean everything. Any relationships?" Enzo asked, forcing the words out, his voice barely a whisper. "Nothing serious. A few dates, but nothing that lasted. She seems to be entirely focused on Noah and her work. She's a good mother, boss. From what I gathered, she's devoted." Enzo closed his eyes, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over him. Relief that she hadn't remarried, hadn't built a new life with another man, and a profound, aching sadness at the thought of Imani raising a child alone, struggling perhaps, when he had more than enough to provide, if it was his child. The thought was a torment, a cruel twist of fate. "And his birth date?" Enzo asked, his voice rough. Marco rattled off the date. Enzo's mind raced, calculating. 5 years ago. That would place his conception exactly 9 months after their divorce was finalized. 9 months after they had last seen each other, after that final, heartbreaking confrontation where she had walked away, believing she was leaving his dangerous world for good. A cold certainty settled in Enzo's gut, heavy and undeniable. It was his son. He knew it. He felt it in his bones, in the sudden, fierce protectiveness that surged through him. Noah. His son. A son he had never known. "Thank you, Marco," Enzo said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, even as his world continued to crumble around him. "That's all for now. Keep this between us. Absolutely no one." "Understood, boss." Marco's voice was filled with a mixture of concern and unspoken questions. Enzo hung up, the phone clattering against the polished wood of his desk. He stared out at the city, the glittering lights now seeming to mock his isolation, his profound loneliness. He had a son. A child he had unknowingly abandoned. A child who had grown up without a father, without the protection, the resources, the love he could have provided. The guilt was a physical ache, a burning in his chest that threatened to consume him. He thought of Imani, of her strength, her resilience. She had faced the world alone, raising their child without a word, without a complaint. She had built a life for them, a quiet, safe haven away from the chaos he embodied. And now, he had inadvertently stumbled back into it, a destructive force threatening to unravel everything she had painstakingly built. What was he going to do? He couldn't just walk away, not now that he knew. Not now that he had seen Noah's face, seen his own reflection in that innocent gaze. He had to be a part of his son's life. He had to make amends. But how? How could he, a man steeped in violence and shadows, integrate himself into their quiet, normal existence without destroying it? And Isabella, the thought of her, waiting for him, for their future, was a sharp pang. He couldn't marry her, not with this hanging over him, not with a secret so profound, so life-altering. He couldn't build a future on a foundation of lies. He had to tell her. But the thought of her heartbroken face, the inevitable confrontation, filled him with dread. He was a coward, he realized, when it came to hurting the women he loved. He poured himself another drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, a reflection of the chaos in his mind. He had to see Noah again. He had to talk to Imani. He had to understand. He had to face the consequences of his past, a past that had just manifested itself in the most unexpected, most profound way imaginable. The Mafia boss, who had once believed himself invincible, felt utterly, irrevocably vulnerable. He was a man adrift, caught between two lives, two loves, and a secret that threatened to tear him apart. And in the quiet solitude of his study, as the city slept, Enzo Moretti finally allowed himself to weep, tears of regret, of longing, of a profound, heartbreaking love for a son he had just discovered. The next morning, Enzo canceled his appointments, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and desperate plans. He couldn't go back to the jewelry store, couldn't face Mr. Dubois, couldn't pretend his life was moving forward with Isabella. Not yet. Not until he had confronted this seismic shift in his reality. He drove, not to his office, but to the quiet residential street where Imani lived. He parked his car a block away, out of sight, and simply watched. He felt like a stalker, a ghost haunting the edges of a life he once belonged to. But he couldn't help himself. He needed to see them again, to confirm the reality of it all, to imprint their faces onto his memory. He waited for hours, his gaze fixed on the brownstone. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows, then began its slow descent. Finally, in the late afternoon, the door opened. Imani emerged, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, holding Noah's hand. The boy was clutching a bright red ball, his face alight with excitement. They walked to a small park a few blocks away, a splash of green amidst the urban landscape. Enzo followed, keeping his distance, his heart aching with every step. He watched as Imani pushed Noah on the swings, her laughter echoing his, a sound that brought a fresh wave of longing. He saw her chase him across the grass, their silhouettes dancing against the setting sun. It was a scene of such simple, pure joy, a stark contrast to the dark, violent world he inhabited. He watched until the last rays of sunlight faded, until the park emptied, until Imani and Noah walked hand in hand back to their brownstone, their figures silhouetted against the streetlights. He stayed hidden, a silent observer, a phantom father watching his son from the shadows. He needed a plan. He couldn't just ambush her. Imani was strong, independent. She wouldn't welcome him back into her life, especially not with a child involved, a child she had raised alone, away from his dangerous influence. He had to approach this carefully, strategically, like a delicate negotiation, not a forceful takeover. He thought of the past, of their tumultuous marriage, of the reasons she had left. His world, his family, the constant threat of violence. It had been too much for her. She had wanted a normal life, a family, a sense of security he couldn't provide. He had let her go, believing it was for her own good, for her safety. And now, he saw the fruit of that decision, a beautiful, happy child, raised in peace, far from the shadows. But the irony was a bitter pill. He had wanted to protect her, to give her that normal life, and in doing so, he had unknowingly created a normal life for his son, a life he was now desperate to be a part of. He drove home, the city lights a blur. He knew what he had to do first. He had to confront his past, acknowledge his mistakes, and somehow find a way to apologize, to explain, to beg for a chance. And that meant facing Imani, and it meant, perhaps, losing Isabella. The thought was a painful one, a sharp, twisting knife in his gut. But he couldn't move forward, couldn't build a new life, not with this monumental secret, this gaping hole in his past, threatening to swallow him whole. He spent the night pacing his study, the whiskey bottle long forgotten. He drafted conversations in his head, rehearsed apologies, imagined her anger, her pain, her inevitable rejection. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Imani was not a woman to be swayed by power or wealth. She was a woman of principle, of integrity, and he had broken her heart once before. He couldn't afford to do it again. But he also couldn't walk away from his son. The next morning, with a resolve he hadn't known he possessed, Enzo made a decision. He would go to her. He would face her, face the truth, and accept whatever consequences came his way. He would lay his cards on the table, confess his ignorance, and beg for a chance to be a father to Noah, a chance to make amends to Imani. It was a dangerous game, one that could shatter his world completely. But for Noah, for Imani, for the ghost of a family he had unknowingly created, he was willing to risk everything. He dressed meticulously, not in his usual power suits, but in a more casual yet still expensive ensemble. He wanted to appear approachable, not intimidating. He wanted to show her that he was not the same man she had left, or at least that he was trying to be different. He left his phone behind, his weapons, everything that connected him to his other life. This was Enzo, the man, not Enzo, the boss. He drove to her brownstone, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his heart hammering against his ribs. He parked directly in front, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beat. The familiar scent of autumn leaves and damp earth filled the air, a stark contrast to the sterile scent of the jewelry store. This was real. This was happening. He got out of the car, his legs feeling strangely heavy, almost numb. He walked up the steps, his gaze fixed on the dark wood of the front door. He raised his hand, his knuckles hovering over the polished brass knocker, his entire body trembling with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. This was it. The moment of truth. The moment he faced his past and perhaps earned a chance at a future he had never dared to dream of. He knocked, the sound echoing hollowly in the quiet street, a reverberation that seemed to shake the very foundations of his world. He waited, every nerve ending screaming. The silence stretched, long and agonizing. He was about to knock again when the door finally opened, slowly, hesitantly. Imani stood there, framed by the soft light of the hallway. Her eyes, wide and startled, met his. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air crackled with unspoken history, with 20 years of pain and regret and unresolved emotions. She looked older, of course, the fine lines around her eyes a testament to the passage of time, to the burdens she had carried. But she was still breathtakingly beautiful, her dark skin glowing, her eyes still holding that fierce, intelligent spark he remembered. "Enzo," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible, a mixture of shock and disbelief. What are you doing here?" Her voice was like a ghost, a haunting melody that plucked at the strings of his heart. He had imagined this moment countless times, but no fantasy could capture the raw emotion, the crushing weight of reality. He saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, quickly replaced by a steely resolve. She was a mother now, a protector. He knew that look. "Imani," he managed, his voice hoarse, thick with emotion. I saw you in the jewelry store with Noah." He swallowed, the words catching in his throat. I know he's my son." The confession hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Imani's face, already pale, drained of all color. Her eyes, those beautiful, expressive eyes, widened further, filled with a mixture of shock, betrayal, and a deep, simmering anger he had once known all too well. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice trembling but imbued with a surprising force. "How dare you just show up here, after all these years, after everything?" She took a step back, her hand instinctively going to the doorframe as if to brace herself. "You have no right, Enzo. No right to be here. No right to him." "Please, Imani," he pleaded, taking a step forward, his hand outstretched, then dropping it, knowing better than to touch her without an invitation. "Just hear me out. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know I had a son." She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Didn't know? How convenient, Enzo. You disappear from my life. You walk away from us, and now, 20 years later, you suddenly didn't know?" Her voice rose, tinged with a raw pain he recognized, a pain he had inflicted. "Do you have any idea what I went through? Raising him alone? Protecting him from your world, from your family, from everything you represent?" "I know," he said, his voice thick with regret. "And I'm so sorry, Imani. More sorry than you can ever imagine. I made a mistake, a terrible, unforgivable mistake. But I want to fix it. I want to be a father to Noah. I want to be a part of his life." She shook her head, her eyes flashing with a dangerous light. "It's too late, Enzo. You forfeited that right a long time ago. Noah has a good life, a safe life. A life without the constant threat of violence, without the shadows of your business. I won't let you disrupt that. I won't let you hurt him." "I would never hurt him, Imani," he said, his voice desperate, earnest. "He's my son, my blood. I swear to you, I would die for him." "You already did, Enzo," she retorted, her voice cracking with emotion. "You died to us the day you chose your family over me. The day you let me walk away, knowing what I wanted, knowing I wanted a child, a family. You knew the risks, Enzo. You knew what you were doing." He winced, the words a direct hit, each one a painful truth. He had known. He had chosen. He had believed he was doing the right thing, protecting her. But now, seeing her pain, seeing the life she had built, he realized the depth of his error, the profound consequences of his choices. "I was a fool," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, raw with humility. "A scared, arrogant fool. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing what was best. I thought I was giving you a chance at a normal life, a life I couldn't provide." "And I built one," she said, her chin lifting defiantly. "A normal life, a good life, for me and for Noah. And you have no place in it, Enzo. None." Just then, a small voice called out from inside the brownstone. "Mommy? Who's at the door?" Imani's eyes widened in alarm, and she quickly moved to block Enzo's view, her body a protective shield. "It's just a delivery, honey. Go back to your toys. I'll be right there." Enzo saw the panic in her eyes, the desperate need to protect Noah from him, from his presence, from the truth. And in that moment, he understood. He understood the depth of her fear, the years of effort she had put into building this safe haven. He was a threat, a dangerous intrusion into their peaceful world. "Imani," he said, his voice softer now, gentler. "Please, just give me a chance to explain, to talk, for Noah's sake. He deserves to know his father, and I deserve a chance to be one." She looked at him, her gaze filled with a mixture of suspicion and a flicker of something else, something he couldn't quite decipher. A hint of the old Imani, perhaps, the woman who had once loved him so fiercely. "I can't, Enzo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not now. Not like this." She began to close the door, slowly, inexorably. Her hand tightened on the doorknob, the movement resolute, final. Enzo felt a cold dread claw at his throat. He couldn't let her close that door, not without a fight, not without making her understand the depth of his regret, the sincerity of his desire to be a part of Noah's life. He saw the pain in her eyes, the raw, open wound of their past, and he knew he was the one who had inflicted it. But he also saw the fierce protectiveness of a mother, a wall he had to somehow breach. "Imani, wait!" he urged, his voice a low, desperate plea. He took another step forward, placing his hand gently on the door, preventing her from closing it completely. "Please, just 5 minutes, that's all I ask. 5 minutes, and if you still want me to leave, I will. I swear." His gaze was intense, unwavering, pouring all his raw emotion into his eyes. "For Noah. If not for me, then for him. He deserves to know." She hesitated, her eyes searching his, a tumultuous battle raging within them. He saw the conflict, the warring emotions, anger, fear, a flicker of something that might have been curiosity, or perhaps a ghost of their shared past. The small voice called out again from inside, closer this time. "Mommy, is the delivery man gone?" The urgency in Noah's voice seemed to snap Imani back to the present. Her shoulders slumped slightly, a sigh escaping her lips. She finally pulled the door open a little wider, stepping back to allow him entry, but her posture remained rigid, defensive. "Fine," she said, her voice tight, barely above a whisper. 5 minutes. But if you upset him, Enzo, if you even think about bringing your world into his, I swear to God, I will make you regret the day you ever found us." Her eyes were blazing now, a fierce warning that left no room for doubt. Enzo nodded, a silent promise. He stepped inside, the familiar scent of her home, a subtle mix of spices, old books, and something warm, comforting, distinctly hers, washing over him, a potent wave of nostalgia that nearly brought him to his knees. The hallway was narrow, cozy, filled with framed photographs and a small coat rack laden with child-sized jackets. It was a home, a true home, unlike the sterile opulence of his penthouse. Noah, drawn by the silence, suddenly appeared from the living room, a small, curious figure with his bright red ball clutched to his chest. He stopped short, his eyes wide, taking in Enzo's presence. He looked from Enzo to Imani, a question in his innocent gaze. Enzo's heart twisted. This was it, the moment of truth. He knelt down, slowly, deliberately, trying to appear non-threatening, his gaze fixed on his son. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice softer than he had ever thought possible, a gentle rumble. "My name is Enzo." Noah didn't respond immediately. He simply stared, his head tilted, that familiar tilt that mirrored Enzo's own. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he took a step closer. His eyes, so like Enzo's, were filled with a mixture of curiosity and a child's innate openness. "Are you a friend of Mommy's?" he asked, his voice a clear, sweet chime. Imani stiffened, her gaze darting to Enzo, a silent mourning. Enzo met her eyes, a silent plea for understanding. This was the hardest part. "Yes, Noah," Enzo said, his voice gentle. "A very old friend of your Mommy's." He offered a tentative smile, a genuine one, not the practiced, cold smile he reserved for his business associates. "That's a nice ball you have there. Do you like to play soccer?" Noah's face lit up. "Yeah! Mommy says I'm super fast!" He bounced the ball once, then again, a burst of childlike energy. "Do you play soccer?" "I used to," Enzo admitted, a faint smile touching his lips as memories of his own childhood, of dusty streets and makeshift goals, flickered in his mind. "I was pretty fast too, back then." Imani watched them, her expression unreadable, a complex mix of apprehension and a reluctant fascination. She saw the way Enzo's eyes softened, the genuine warmth in his smile, a side of him she hadn't seen in years, a side she had once loved. But she also saw the danger, the potential for disruption. "Noah, why don't you go play in your room for a little while?" Imani said, her voice a little too forced, a little too bright. "Mr. Enzo and I need to talk about grown-up things." Noah pouted but complied, skipping off towards the back of the house, his red ball bouncing ahead of him. As soon as he was out of earshot, Imani turned to Enzo, her eyes cold, hard. "Don't you dare, Enzo," she hissed, her voice low and fierce. "Don't you dare charm him. Don't you dare try to worm your way into his life. He's innocent. He doesn't need your complications." "I'm not trying to charm him, Imani," Enzo said, rising to his feet, his gaze pleading. "I'm trying to connect with my son. My son, Imani, the child I never knew I had. Do you truly believe I would willingly miss 5 years of his life?" She scoffed, a bitter sound. "You missed it, Enzo. You chose to miss it. When you walked away, you chose your life, your family, your business. You chose that over me, over us, over any possibility of a future, of a child. I was pregnant when I left, Enzo. I didn't know for sure, but I suspected. And I knew I couldn't raise a child in your world. I knew I had to protect him. So I left. I built a new life, a safe life, away from you, away from all of it." His heart clenched, a sharp, excruciating pain. "You were pregnant?" he whispered, the words barely audible, laced with a profound, gut-wrenching regret. And you didn't tell me? What good would it have done, Enzo? She retorted, her voice rising, raw with emotion. Would you have left your empire for me? For a child? Would you have abandoned everything you were, everything you had built? I knew the answer then, and I know it now. You would have tried to protect us, yes, but your protection meant bringing us deeper into your darkness, not pulling us out of it. And I couldn't do that to a child. To our child. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked back the tears fiercely, refusing to show weakness. I made a choice, Enzo. The hardest choice of my life. I chose Noah's safety, his innocence, over everything else. And I don't regret it. Enzo stood there, stunned, the full weight of her revelation crashing down on him. She had been pregnant. She had left him, not just for herself, but for their unborn child. A child he had unknowingly pushed away, unknowingly condemned to a fatherless existence. The guilt was a suffocating shroud, a burden almost too heavy to bear. Imani, he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. I am so sorry. I was a fool, a blind, arrogant fool. I thought I was strong, thought I was making the right choices, but I was just running from the responsibility, from the fear of bringing an innocent into my world. I never stopped loving you, Imani. Never. And if I had known, if I had just known, I would have changed everything. I swear to you, I would have. She looked at him, her gaze softening slightly, a flicker of the old tenderness in her eyes, quickly overshadowed by a deep sadness. It's too late for that, Enzo. Too many years have passed. Too much has happened. We're different people now. But we have Noah, he insisted, his voice desperate. He connects us. He's a part of both of us. He deserves to know his father, Imani, and I deserve a chance to be one, to make amends, to provide for him, to protect him, to be there for him in every way I can. She sighed, running a hand through her hair, her shoulders slumping in defeat. The anger seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a profound weariness. It's not that simple, Enzo. You can't just walk back into his life after 5 years and expect everything to be okay. He has a routine. He has a life. He has a sense of stability I fought tooth and nail to give him. And you represent everything I tried to shield him from. I understand that, Enzo said, his voice earnest. And I promise you, I will never bring my world into his. I will do whatever it takes. I will meet him on his terms. I will be a father, not who I am now. I will be Enzo, the man, the father, not the boss. I swear it, Imani. She looked at him, a long, searching gaze, trying to discern the sincerity in his eyes, the truth in his words. She saw the raw emotion, the genuine regret, the desperate longing. She knew Enzo. She knew he was capable of great darkness, but also of profound loyalty, of fierce, unwavering love. And she saw the undeniable resemblance, the mirror image of Enzo in her son's innocent face. It was a truth she could no longer deny, a connection she could no longer sever. What about your fiancée? She finally asked, her voice low, a hint of accusation in her tone. Isabella? What about your new life, Enzo? The one you were just about to solidify with a wedding ring. The question was a sharp reminder of the life he was leaving behind, the woman he was about to hurt. He closed his eyes, a pang of guilt shooting through him. "I haven't told her yet," he admitted, his voice heavy. "But I will. I can't marry her, not with this, not with you and Noah. It wouldn't be fair to her, or to you, or to him." He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze, his own filled with a desperate honesty. "My future, Imani, is here, with you, with Noah, if you'll let me." She stared at him, speechless, the weight of his words hanging in the air. He was offering her everything, offering to dismantle his entire life, his entire future, for a chance to be with them. It was a gesture both terrifying and incredibly moving. I don't know, Enzo," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need time to think, to process all of this. It's a lot." "I understand," he said, his voice gentle. "Take all the time you need. But please, Imani, don't shut me out. Don't shut Noah out. Let me prove to you that I've changed, that I can be the man you always wanted me to be, the father Noah deserves." A small, hesitant sigh escaped her. "Okay," she finally said, her voice still trembling but with a hint of resignation. "Okay, Enzo, we can talk. But not here, not now, and not where Noah can hear us." She glanced towards the back of the house, a protective instinct overriding her anger. "I'll call you. Give me your number." Enzo quickly recited his number, his heart soaring with a fragile hope. It wasn't a full acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. A crack in the wall she had built around herself, around Noah. "I'll be waiting," he said, his voice filled with a profound gratitude. He took a step back, giving her space, giving her time. "Thank you, Imani, for everything." She nodded, her gaze still distant, lost in thought. He knew he had pushed her to her limits, had forced her to confront a past she had painstakingly buried. But he also knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within him, that he couldn't walk away, not from Noah, not from the possibility of a future, however uncertain, with the woman he had never truly stopped loving. He turned and walked towards the door, his steps lighter now, a glimmer of hope rekindling in his heart. He glanced back one last time before stepping outside. Imani was still standing in the hallway, watching him, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. He offered her a small, hopeful smile, a silent promise that he wouldn't give up, that he would fight for them, for their son, for a chance at redemption. He closed the door gently behind him, the click resonating with a different kind of finality this time. Not an ending, but a beginning. A terrifying, uncertain yet profoundly hopeful beginning. He got back into his car, the quiet street now feeling less like a trap and more like a sanctuary. He had a son. He had a chance. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would face Isabella, face the wrath of his family, face the entire world if he had to claim the future that had just, miraculously, appeared before him. His life, which had once been a carefully choreographed dance of power and control, was now a chaotic, unpredictable whirlwind, and for the first time in a very long time, Enzo Moretti felt truly, terrifyingly alive. The confrontation with Isabella was, as expected, brutal. He chose a quiet, upscale restaurant, hoping the public setting would temper her reaction. It didn't. He told her everything, leaving out no detail, from the chance encounter in the jewelry store to the heartbreaking revelation of Noah's existence. He watched her face crumble, the beautiful composure she usually maintained shattering into 1,000 pieces. Her eyes, usually warm and loving, turned cold, filled with betrayal and pain. "You're telling me," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, each word a shard of ice, "that you were about to propose to me, to promise me a future, all while knowing you might have a child with your ex-wife? That you were prepared to build our life on a lie?" "I didn't know, Isabella," he pleaded, his voice raw with remorse. "Not until that day, I swear to you. And I couldn't just walk away from it, from him. He's my son, my blood." "And what about us, Enzo?" she countered, her voice rising now, drawing hushed glances from nearby tables. "What about our future? Was I just a placeholder? A convenient distraction until your past caught up with you?" Tears welled in her eyes, finally spilling over, tracing paths down her elegant cheeks. "I loved you, Enzo. I truly believed in you, in us. I believed you wanted a life free from your past. But it seems your past is all you truly care about." He reached for her hand, but she recoiled, pulling it away as if his touch burned her. "Isabella, please, don't say that. I love you, I do. But this is different. This is my son. A part of me I never knew existed. I have to make amends. I have to be a father to him." "And what about me?" she sobbed, her voice breaking. "Where do I fit into this picture, Enzo? Do you expect me to stand by while you reconcile with your ex-wife and play daddy to a child you abandoned? I'm not a fool, Enzo. I know what this means. You're still in love with her, aren't you? With Imani?" The question hung in the air, a devastating truth he couldn't deny. He loved Isabella, yes. But the love he felt for Imani, the fierce, consuming love of his youth, the love that had been forged in fire and pain, had never truly died. It had simply been buried, waiting for the spark of Noah's existence to rekindle it. He looked at Isabella, her face streaked with tears, her heart clearly broken. He hated himself for the pain he was inflicting, for the wreckage he was leaving in his wake. But he couldn't lie. Not to her, not to himself, not anymore. I don't know, Isabella," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I honestly don't know. All I know is that I can't marry you. Not now, not like this, not with this truth hanging over us." She stared at him for a long, agonizing moment, her gaze filled with a profound sadness, a deep, weary understanding. Then, slowly, she rose from the table, her movements stiff, her eyes still fixed on his. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Enzo," she said, her voice devoid of emotion now, a chilling emptiness. "But it won't be with me." She turned and walked away, leaving him alone at the table, the untouched food growing cold, the shattered pieces of their future scattered around him. He watched her go, a profound sense of loss settling over him, heavy and cold. He had hurt her, deeply, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that he deserved it. He had chosen his past, his son, over the woman he was about to marry, and now he had to face the consequences, alone. The days that followed were a blur of anxious waiting. Imani hadn't called. Enzo felt like a man suspended in limbo, his life on hold, waiting for a verdict that would determine his entire future. He tried to focus on his work, but his mind constantly drifted, replaying the conversations, imagining Noah's face, the possibility of a life he so desperately craved. He knew he had to give her space, to respect her decision, but the yearning to see Noah, to talk to Imani, was a constant ache in his chest. He drove by her brownstone occasionally, a silent sentinel, hoping for a glimpse, a sign, anything to alleviate the suffocating uncertainty. Then, one afternoon, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. His heart leaped into his throat. He answered, his voice tight with anticipation. "Enzo?" Imani's voice, hesitant, guarded, but undeniably hers. "Imani," he breathed, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thank God. I was starting to think you weren't going to call." "I needed time," she said, her voice still cautious. "A lot of time. To think. To process. To decide what's best for Noah." "And," he urged, his heart pounding, "what did you decide?" A long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant hum of city traffic. Enzo held his breath, every fiber of his being focused on her answer. I'm willing to talk," she finally said, her voice a little stronger, more resolute. "For Noah's sake. He deserves to know his father, and you deserve a chance to prove yourself. But on my terms, Enzo. Strictly on my terms. No surprises, no drama, and absolutely no bringing your life into his." "Anything, Imani," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. "Anything you want. Just tell me what to do." "We'll start slow," she said, laying out her conditions. "No sudden appearances, no overwhelming him. We'll meet in neutral places, parks, museums, places where he's comfortable. You'll be introduced as a friend of Mommy's for now. We'll gradually transition, and if at any point I feel that you're a threat to his well-being, to his peace, I will cut you off, permanently. Do you understand?" "I understand," he said, his voice filled with a profound gratitude. "And I agree, completely. Thank you, Imani. Thank you for this chance." "Don't thank me yet," she retorted, a hint of her old fire returning. "You have a lot to prove, Enzo Moretti. A lot to make up for. And I'm not going to make it easy for you." He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "I wouldn't expect you to. Just tell me when and where." And so began Enzo's journey into fatherhood, a journey fraught with challenges, with tentative steps and fragile hopes. Their first meeting was at a children's museum, a chaotic wonderland of bright colors and joyful noise. Enzo, usually so composed, felt a nervous tremor in his hands. He watched Noah, a small dynamo of energy, darting from exhibit to exhibit, his eyes wide with wonder. Imani introduced him simply as Enzo, a friend from a long time ago. Noah, naturally curious, accepted him readily, his innocent gaze holding no judgment, no suspicion. Enzo found himself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in years, as he helped Noah build a towering block structure. As he watched him chase bubbles in the sensory room, he saw the world through Noah's eyes. A world of pure joy and boundless possibility. A world he had almost forgotten existed. He learned to be patient, to listen, to engage on Noah's level. He learned about Noah's favorite superheroes, his love for dinosaurs, his fear of the dark. He read him bedtime stories, his deep voice surprisingly soothing, surprisingly comforting. He helped him with his homework, his sharp mind adapting quickly to elementary school math. He taught him how to kick a soccer ball, his powerful legs surprisingly gentle as he guided Noah's small foot. Imani watched him, her initial suspicion slowly melting away, replaced by a cautious acceptance, a reluctant admiration. She saw the genuine love in his eyes, the profound connection he was forging with their son. She saw the way he transformed in Noah's presence, the hardened edges of the Mafia boss softening, revealing the man she had once loved. Their conversations were often difficult, filled with lingering pain and unresolved issues. They talked about their past, about the choices they had made, about the years they had lost. Enzo apologized again and again for his mistakes, for his arrogance, for the pain he had caused. Imani, in turn, confessed her own struggles, the loneliness, the fear, the burden of raising Noah alone. Slowly, painstakingly, a fragile bridge of understanding began to form between them, built on the shared love for their son. One evening, after putting Noah to bed, they sat in Imani's living room, the quiet hum of the city outside a gentle backdrop to their hushed conversation. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with the weight of 20 years of history. "He loves you, Enzo," Imani said, her voice soft, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "He really does. He talks about you constantly. Enzo showed me how to draw a T-Rex. Enzo told me a funny story. Enzo said I'm the fastest kicker." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of tenderness and a lingering sadness. "You're a good father, Enzo. A really good father." Enzo's heart swelled with a profound gratitude. Her words, simple as they were, meant more to him than any declaration of power, any victory in his other life. "He's a good boy, Imani," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A truly amazing boy. And it's all thanks to you. You raised him beautifully. You gave him everything I couldn't." "We did it together, Enzo," she corrected, her gaze unwavering. "Even when you weren't here, you were a part of him. And now you're here. For real." She reached out, her hand hovering over his, then gently covered it, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through him. "I'm still angry, Enzo, still hurt. But I also see the man you've become, the man you're trying to be, and I can't deny Noah that." He turned his hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, their touch a silent communion, a reconnection of two souls that had once been irrevocably bound. "Imani," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I never stopped loving you. Not truly. Even when I tried to convince myself otherwise, you were always there, in the back of my mind, in my heart." She met his gaze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, a mirroring of the emotion in his own. "I know, Enzo," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "I felt it too. Even when I tried to hate you, tried to forget you, a part of me always hoped." He leaned in, slowly, tentatively, searching her eyes for any sign of resistance. There was none. Only a profound longing, a shared desire that had been buried for too long. He closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a soft, tender kiss, a kiss that tasted of regret and redemption, of lost years and newfound hope. It was not a kiss of passion, not yet. It was a kiss of forgiveness, of understanding, of a fragile promise of a future they were both, finally, willing to explore. The road ahead was still uncertain, fraught with challenges. His world, his business, still loomed, a dangerous shadow that threatened to engulf them. But for the first time in a very long time, Enzo Moretti felt a sense of peace, a sense of purpose. He had found his son. He had found his way back to the woman he loved, and he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that he would fight for them, for their family, for the quiet, normal life he had once denied them, with every fiber of his being. The Mafia boss had gone to buy a wedding ring, but instead, he had found his true home. And he knew, with a profound clarity, that this was the greatest treasure of all. Months turned into a year, then 2. Enzo slowly, painstakingly, disentangled himself from the most violent aspects of his business, handing over control to trusted lieutenants, focusing instead on the legitimate enterprises that had always been a cover for his illicit activities. It was a dangerous game, one that drew the ire of some of his more ruthless associates. But Enzo, driven by a new purpose, was unwavering. He wanted a clean slate, a life free from the constant threat of violence, for Noah, for Imani. He moved out of his opulent penthouse, finding a more modest yet still comfortable home in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood, just a few blocks from Imani's brownstone. He was a constant presence in Noah's life, a loving, devoted father, always there for school plays, soccer games, and bedtime stories. Noah, now 7, adored him, his innocent heart completely open to the father he had so unexpectedly gained. Imani watched him, her heart slowly, cautiously, opening to him once more. She saw the genuine transformation, the profound commitment he had made to them. Their relationship was a slow burn, a gentle rekindling of a love that had never truly died. They spent evenings talking, laughing, rebuilding the intimacy they had lost, brick by painful brick. There were still lingering wounds, still moments of doubt, but the shared love for Noah and the undeniable pull between them was a powerful force, drawing them closer with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, a few years after that fateful day in the jewelry store, Enzo stood in a different jeweler's showroom, a much smaller, more discreet establishment. He was alone this time, no nervous Mr. Dubois, no looming shadows of his past. He held a simple gold band in his hand, unadorned, classic. It wasn't the glittering diamond he had once chosen for Isabella, a symbol of a life he no longer desired. This was different. This was a symbol of quiet commitment, of enduring love, of a future built on truth and forgiveness. He thought of Imani, of her strength, her resilience, her unwavering love for their son. He thought of Noah, his bright eyes, his infectious laughter, the pure joy he had brought into Enzo's life. He thought of the journey they had taken, the pain, the regret, the long, arduous path to redemption. And he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that this was where he belonged. He paid for the ring in cash, a discreet transaction, just as he preferred. But this time, there was no shadow, no hidden agenda, just a profound sense of peace. He walked out of the store, the small velvet box tucked safely in his pocket, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He found Imani in the park, pushing Noah on the swings, their laughter echoing in the afternoon sun. He walked towards them, a gentle smile on his face, his gaze fixed on the woman who had once been his greatest loss and was now, miraculously, his greatest gain. Noah, spotting him, leaped off the swing, running towards him, his arms outstretched. Enzo scooped him up, a powerful arm wrapping around his son, a fierce love swelling in his chest. "Hey, champ, having fun?" "Enzo!" Noah squealed, burying his face in his shoulder. "Mommy says we can get ice cream after." Enzo smiled, meeting Imani's gaze over Noah's head. Her eyes, filled with a warmth that melted his heart, held a silent question, a gentle invitation. He put Noah down, took Imani's hand, and led her to a quiet bench beneath a sprawling oak tree. He knelt before her, slowly, deliberately, pulling the small velvet box from his pocket. Imani's eyes widened, a gasp escaping her lips, a mixture of shock and a profound, overwhelming emotion. "Imani," he said, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze unwavering. "I know I messed up. I know I caused you pain. I know I forfeited my right to you, to us, a long time ago. But I also know, with every fiber of my being, that I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I want to build a future with you, with Noah, a future filled with love, with peace, with everything we both deserve." He opened the box, revealing the simple gold band gleaming in the sunlight. "Imani Davis, will you marry me? Will you make me the happiest man in the world and give me the chance to finally, truly be a family with you and our son?" Tears streamed down her face, tears of joy, of relief, of a profound, overwhelming love. She didn't hesitate. "Yes, Enzo," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, the simple gold band a perfect fit, a symbol of their enduring love, their hard-won redemption. He rose, pulling her into his arms, holding her close. Their embrace a silent promise of a future finally, truly within their grasp. Noah, sensing the profound emotion, ran towards them, wrapping his small arms around their legs, a joyful, innocent bridge between their reunited hearts. The Mafia boss, who had once sought power and control, had found something far more valuable: a family, a love that had defied time and circumstance, and a future built on the solid foundation of forgiveness, truth, and unwavering love. They say love is a weakness. They're lying. Love, true love, was the only thing that had ever truly saved Enzo Moretti. And in the warm embrace of his family, under the gentle glow of the setting sun, he knew, with a profound certainty, that he was finally, truly, home.